Welcome everybody to Challenging Montessori Practice session for Montessori Musings. We felt it would be useful to revisit the activities of everyday living, or as we used to call it, the practical life activities, because we have felt that somehow we have lost the spirit of what the activities are all about, and suddenly we have become quite commercial. We have heard people talking about having all the 35 practical life activities on the shelves, and we have really wondered what it all meant, when the only thing that Montessori really mentions in her writing are the dressing frames. And when I started training Montessori 35 years ago, we have had some polishing activities which had their origin in the work that children did in helping to look after the chapel when Montessori first started to work with children. And so rather than focusing on the activities, we wanted to look at the indirect preparations and what those indirect aims or indirect objectives really mean to our everyday life with children, and to the delivery of all the Montessori values and the basics of the Montessori philosophy. So, a little bit too long an introduction, sorry, I got into the flow without thinking too much about it. We will have Hannah Bainham's recorded presentation, because unfortunately she cannot be with us tonight. And we will also have Ruth joining us, because in her dissertation she has focused on the use and value of activities of everyday living and what they mean to us. So she will share with us some of her research. So welcome, Ruth. And again, welcome, Wendelin. And would you mind very much reminding us all about the ground rules?
Yeah, I'm going to keep that really short, because I think you all know by now. Just keep your microphones on mute, please, so that your background noise, fans probably keeping you cool, don't interfere with the speakers this evening. If you'd like to, if you have a question, and I think the idea is that we'll watch the video, Hannah's vlog, and Ruth and Barbara will have a short chat, but then we would like to throw it open to hear your views as well. And the easiest way to do that is by putting a note in the chat box. There's a little chat icon at the bottom. Or if you fancy it, you can click on participants again at the bottom, and there's a little raise hand symbol, and you can put a question to us properly, verbally, if you like. So those are the ground rules.
Thank you very much, Wendelin. And before you switch on and before you come to share Hannah's presentation, I would just like to mention that we absolutely appreciate that each one of us is traveling our own journey of understanding where children are and how we understand children's learning. But the whole purpose of our sessions of Challenging Montessori Practice is to open some of these little conundrums or inconsistencies or elements of practice which continue to challenge us to a wider audience. And please don't feel afraid if you don't agree with some of the things that we are going to share. They are there to be discussed and teased out, because it is the dialogue which really matters in these situations, not the outcome of it. We are all on a journey of learning, and I hope that's why you have joined us tonight. So thanks very much, Wendelin.
My name is Hannah Bainham, and I'm a Montessori teacher educator. I have the privilege of teaching future Montessorians some of the curriculum areas at MCI. Today, I wanted to share something that I've been thinking about, that rethinking of practical life. Practical life is an area I really enjoy having discussions with students in the classroom, future Montessori practitioners, about what it really means. And today I want to look at how the indirect objectives should really be our main objective, or our main focus in this area. Practical life introduces children to activities of everyday living. It allows them to practice and refine these skills, but it also helps them to adapt to culture and the community around them. But most importantly, it gives them a sense of belonging. They feel a part of the bigger community. They have responsibility and respect for the community, and they're able to participate within that community, which allows the sense of belonging to be developed. I believe practical life is the starting point for cosmic education. It allows children to understand and to feel respected themselves. It shows responsibility, and in turn, it lays foundation for sustainability through the interconnection, that interdependence, where children explore and understand that their actions have effects on others. It also lays the groundwork for being a citizen of the world. By allowing children to develop that sense of belonging and understanding, where they start to understand their place in the world, which paves way for aspects of social justice. Cosmic education is a foundation of Montessori education, and the seeds are really being planted within activities of everyday living. Even before you get to the culture area, these seeds are being planted, and that connection to the cosmos, that connection to community happens within this area. I wanted to start by showing an example of how children can participate in real life experiences through showing my nephew feeding Annie the dog. Children belonging and having a sense of their part within the household is key. If you look at my nephew Julian feeding this dog, you see them opening and closing boxes. You see them transferring with a measuring cup, measuring up just the right amount of food for the dog. They're transferring, and then he's carrying the bowl to the dog to be fed, which really allows children to participate in practical parts of family life. So they are practicing these skills, but in real life, and through their participation, they're creating that sense of belonging. Children, through things such as feeding pets, are learning responsibility, but they're also learning that respect for all living kinds, everything that's living in the earth, and also seeing that interdependence, that connection with nature, with animals, with each other. When you look at activities that we develop in the classroom and trays, we often try and replicate activities that they see in real life. So for example, this coffee plunger will allow a child to practice how to use a French press and practice these skills and refine these skills. But I feel the real learning happens when we trust children to participate in real life experiences, such as the photo on the right, where my nephew is using the coffee plunger to actually prepare a cup of coffee for his father. I think this leads directly onto that idea of these indirect objectives. One of my students once highlighted this acronym, COSMIC, to help her understand and to remember the indirect objectives. And this has really stayed with me in my understanding of how cosmic education is related to practical life. When you look at cosmic, we look at first concentration. Concentration by allowing them to fulfill their inner need to help themselves. Children are really allowed to concentrate and develop concentration in this area because it's things that are directly related to helping themselves, to giving them a sense of purpose, and to giving them a sense of connectedness. We also see order here. It helps children fulfill their need for order, not only in completing a task, but also helping things be predictable, so children know where to find things, and they're able to follow the routines of the classroom and at home. A big element here is socialization, because Practical life allows children to be part of a community. They can role play in that area, in that they help each other make tea, or they role play with each other a birthday party, but also it allows them socialization in real life. So by allowing them to have a sense of belonging and purpose, they're able to see themselves more than just an individual child, but as part of a bigger community. Movement is also important because it refines the manipulative skills, but also we must remember it allows for that freedom of movement. So those freedoms for gross motor skills as well as fine motor skills. A key aspect here in practical life is that concept of independence. It's allowing a child agency, which again relates to their participants in real life. By developing that agency, by developing that independence, it promotes that sense of confidence within children, that they're able to be successful, that they're able to do things for themselves. And that confidence will allow them to experience challenges and to participate and not to be fearful of challenges. We want children to be confident in their abilities and to not push them before they're ready. Participating and growing and being connected with real life and nature is an important part of practical life. Some simple activities such as planting allows a child to use those manipulative skills to dig the hole, but also a child becomes independent and connected to nature through the watering, through flower arranging, through the connection, and that idea of being a part of the natural world, so seeing their connectedness in the natural world. I think it's also important for children to participate in activities that parents value or the family value. So participating in hobbies like horse riding shows that care and nurture for nature, for animals, for others, and gives them that foundation in those guidelines. In my brother's family, fishing is very important, and the boys have been involved with fishing at a very young age. They're learning how to fly fish, how to cast the rod, those manipulative skills involved in fly fishing and catching a fish, using a net to catch the fish. But my family is also catch and release. They believe in catch and release. So it's catching the fish, but also releasing the fish back into nature. This really shows that respect for life, that connection to nature, and that responsibility for nature, and respect for all things, which we want all children to feel and to believe in. Practical life is really allowing children to practice and participate in real life. And our role as adults is to have the patience and the trust to let them do so.
Thank you very much, Wendelin, for sharing this with us. And I hope that the little presentation has provoked some thoughts and will allow you to think back about the ideas. For me, the main message that Hannah is trying to share with us is the idea that the activities of everyday living have to be meaningful and have to have a purpose in the child's everyday life. And I think sometimes pouring from jug to jug becomes a mechanistic activity where the main focus for the child is using the little sponge on the side of the tray so that they can mop up and squeeze it back into the jug, which is something that we would never really in real life want them to do it, because all the dust and the dirt from the tray then ends up in the jug that the child has to pour again. This is the water that they have to resurface. But I would like to invite Ruth to perhaps share some of her reflections, because she made some very valid points about the focus on the manipulative skills of these activities. Would you like to comment, Ruth?
Yes. So yeah, as part of my dissertation, I decided to focus on AEL based. It came from another dissertation I did last year. And the dissertation question is in relation to how AEL activities relate to social skills and practitioners' understanding of it. So it more focuses on the practitioners' understanding as Montessorians. And so just like Hannah, I believe, you know, the cosmic AEL is the doorway to cosmic education. And because it helps children to understand their cosmic task. But I feel like the challenge that we're having as Montessorians at the moment is, as a community at the moment, is we are narrowing down our focus of AEL to our shelves in the classroom. Thus, you know, we focus on manipulative skills. However, so this focus on manipulative skills is also causing us to focus on the direct objectives of Montessori, or vice versa. Maybe it is our focus on the direct objectives of AEL that is leading us to the manipulative skills. However, if we zoom out of this focus and see the indirect objectives of AEL, just like Hannah was mentioning, that cosmic, it gives us a broader approach towards AEL, and we see how AEL is very much linked to every corner of the classroom. So from my experience in working in Montessori schools, sometimes we tend to have, you know, we allocate people to AEL, not just AEL, but we allocate people to the certain areas of the classroom. And it happens to be that we tend to allocate the less experienced person towards AEL. And this, I believe, stems out from our narrow approach towards AEL. And I really believe that, you know, because it is more to do, it's a very broad area. AEL is a very broad area because it just comes, you know, like we can't even narrow it down to our classroom. It goes way beyond our classrooms. And it helps our children understand their cosmic task. So when Montessori was talking about, you know, socialization as a whole, she started her argument that is, you know, in the chapter of socialization on the book, which book was that? The Observant Mind. And she starts with concentration, and her focus was so much on concentration. You kind of have the question in your mind, like, where is she going with this? Because the focus is more on the self. But I believe Montessori's approach to socialization was, you know, mastery of the self precedes socialization. You need to understand the self in order to be able to socialize, you know, effectively with the society that is around you. And that's maybe why, you know, the AEL activity is more focused, I mean, the manipulative skills, more focused on the individual and concentration and all that. However, this is just an alleyway to take us to the broad definition of AEL, which is so much vast than just the manipulative skills. So for me, as Montessorians, it's better to just, you know, zoom out of our focus and see AEL as a big picture, as a way to cosmic education. And during, I had a focus group for my dissertation, as well as I had few interviews. And I haven't analyzed my data fully yet, but the big things that jump out of the conversations were cosmic education and respect. So all of these things that has to do with cosmic education. So for me, it is very clear that in our minds as Montessorians, or at least with the people that I spoke to, cosmic education was a very important aspect, or like the core of AEL, if I can say.
And perhaps to reflect further on this, Ruth, the focus on the manipulative skills leads us towards the indirect preparation. And so we have often linked the pouring activities and the manipulative skills to the child's preparation for writing, to the child's preparation for sorting. So it's quite a narrow focus where we demonstrate that the activities have a value because we can link it to something that is valued by society as desirable, to be prepared for writing, to be prepared for reading, to become a numerate person. And we have totally lost the social element of the activities of everyday living, which through personal competence, through the autonomy of the child, we are giving the child the agency to contribute to society. So in fact, that element, the fact that I can do something for myself and I can do something that I value because I have seen adults do it, this connection between home and what is useful in everyday life is in fact somehow lost in the focus on the manipulative skills. And we see the child's natural tendency towards empathy and towards wanting to be helpful, towards thinking about the community. For example, when a child learns how to do a zip, they will want to zip the anorak for their friends when they're going outside, or when they learn how to tie bows, they will immediately want to help somebody in the classroom doing their shoes. So there's an element, the social element, the gradual transformation from the independence and individual skills towards the social element, it becomes quite important.
Leanne is saying, Ruth, that she agrees with you that it is often the less experienced practitioners that are placed in the activities of everyday living area. But it's a good place to start as a practitioner to sort of practice their presence in the classroom, practicing that non-interference, which you know, that we have to learn to abandon, and to observe the children. And as more experienced practitioners, we can then start mentoring the new practitioners to reflect and make links to cosmic education.
But I wonder if we really see the role of the less experienced practitioner in this wider social context. We often put the less experienced practitioners into that area, or I have experienced that, because they can then do the mopping up and do the tidying up. It can be quite labor intensive area of the classroom. And so the kind of is very wrongly perceived not to be important, when in fact this should be the most important, because we establish the routines, we establish the cycles of activity, and all of it has to be demonstrated in a most respectful way to the child, because it is the respect and the trust in the child's capacity to do something on their own, which will give them the social foundation for their confidence. And I like Heidi's comment that AEL activities have got a very strong emotional base, not only through the confidence, but also through the fact that the child is able to contribute to the whole group. And that sense of belonging and well-being that the activities promote in the child are really fundamental to how the child grows in spiritual autonomy and spiritual independence, how the child understands the interdependence of all living things.
I do agree with Leanne that it is a foundation and it's a good starting point for everyone. However, I also believe that, you know, we all are, you know, part of society. So society or our social experiences shape how we see things. So although, you know, as Montessorians, we want to come away from the focus on literacy and numeracy, we still are part of society, and this is how we all were brought up. So there is always that tendency to focus more on literacy and numeracy. And I believe that has, you know, a contribution in a way how we deal with, you know, those learning areas in our classrooms. And, you know, we have to unlearn the things that we have learned from society by the spiritual reflection that we have to do every day. It needs to be consistent. So I do value AEL, and I do value, you know, new teachers being working in AEL, but also, it could be, it could be for that reason, but sometimes it could be for a different reason, just as I mentioned, because I do see people who do not have any experience with Montessori at all, who haven't trained to be Montessori teachers, like they're newly hired in the nursery, and they would just be allocated to AEL, which is good because for them it is good it gives them a way to understand the philosophy of Montessori. It's the best area to understand the philosophy behind all these areas. However, always doing this, maybe they can shadow someone who is experienced while they work on AEL. However, just leaving them on their own to figure it out just shows us, how we have shaped our minds through society's view on these things.
Suzanne has also reminded us of the importance of connectedness with real life. And I think that was one of the really important messages that Hannah has tried to share, that the activities have to be meaningful to the children. And what is the point of teaching the children how to pour from jug to jug when in fact they are not allowed to pour their own snack? Being able to actually taking the time and introduce how to serve individual snack in the classroom is as valuable, if not more valuable, than how to teach them how to pour from jug to jug, because the child is using a skill that they will then be using with other children. And I think that's the message. I remember when I relatively recently, a colleague had mentioned that Ms. Humphrey and Ms. Child, who started at St. Nicholas, actually did not advocate having any activities of AEL on the shelf, but to have resources under the sink, and that the children create their own activities as and when they need it. And for me, I then took it a little bit further, and I thought, well, how about if in the home corner or in the area where the children pretend to be playing home, if we gave them real utensils and we allowed them to use water, where they could really create their activities which are meaningful to the children, because in the home corner, the children simply are mirroring what they have seen done at home. And only today, our granddaughter suddenly asked me about ironing. And it was so interesting because Hannah included that ironing in her last slide, where or in one of the later slides, where they allowed children to use traveling iron. And she was so interested. I have got an old metal iron, which I use as a doorstop. And she suddenly said, well, how would you use that iron? Show me. I know it's pretend. So she knew it wasn't real, but she was interested and she would really want to. So for me, that would have been a fantastic prompt to say, well, actually, I have got a little iron and I will show you how it works. And we can try to do that together. So maybe thinking a little bit more about what we offer and how we engage with these activities would be useful to give that whole idea of understanding of contribution to the community, understanding that if I do something good for somebody, they will benefit, and then, the whole idea of interdependence, and also thinking about how many more activities we could do outside that would be meaningful to the children, as we are hopefully going to be doing many more activities post-corona in the outside. Perhaps we need to think about how we set up the mud kitchen, supplying the mud kitchen with beautiful stainless steel tools to use is always so much more inviting than having a collection of beaten up kitchen tools that nobody wants to use, so they go into the kitchen. So we can still use the principles of preparing and caring for the environment in a respectful way for the children. We can still make it beautiful, but it can be done in a less formal way, but more meaningful to the children. And I see Anna Maria put sweeping with exclamation marks. And I just absolutely have to share an anecdote from my own experience. When we first started the nursery school, we had a boy who was perfectly capable of transferring these little orange lentils that I had in the bowl. But every single day he spilled them and pushed them off the table onto the floor. And I was getting somewhat irritated by this. Why is he doing it? I couldn't understand why he was doing it. And then I realized he wanted to sweep them. So he created his sweeping activities in order to practice sweeping, practice something real to sweep, rather than having these little cuttings which you spread around and make a fake activity which is not purposeful. And I think that connects many of the threads of what we have discussed until now, and making meaningful activities for the children which respond to their individual needs at the time is probably, that's what we are inviting you to think about for the future.
I think Leanne has a good comment as well, and it's about following the child, isn't it? It's about following their interests, as you discussed with Fion's interest in the iron, and Leanne's little child going into the kitchen and creating their own activities, which have a sort of AEL, have AEL at the root, or the AEL principles at their root. You know, if we follow the child inside or out, it becomes so much more meaningful, doesn't it? It does remind me, though, you did very kindly share a picture of Fion, your lovely granddaughter, recently. Was it a shovel or a, what was it? Where she was, it was a...
Well, she lives on a farm, and they are calving at the moment, and they have been going much more to the farm, and she was able to observe feeding cows, and she visited a friend where all the silage had fallen out of the troughs, and she used a full-size shovel filled with the silage and feeding it to the cow. And when she came home, she said that she was feeding the one with the white spot because she was the leader. So she even sussed out the social conditions of the herd as she was feeding the cow. But what struck me about that little photograph was her deep level of concentration and her real physical prowess in filling the full-size shovel and trying to lift it up to the cow's mouth so that she would feed the cow. So you had all these indirect objectives in that one picture, in an activity that she has created herself, but she was allowed to create it for herself. And I think that is the lesson for us as practitioners. Please think about how much freedom you give the children to do these things.
So it goes back to that trust, doesn't it? Sorry, Ruth.
I was going to say, I just saw, earlier I saw a comment from Adriana Vanova, and she was talking about how we, or maybe in her setting, children used to cut snack, help with that. However, because of the COVID situation now, how things are limited. And I was thinking about, how things have evolved and how we need to adapt, not just the COVID situation, but between Montessori and us, there is 400 years gap. And as much as life has evolved and there is a modernization of things, now what used to be an AEL activity or a practical life activity then is not compatible with the society we have right now. Maybe manipulating your computer is not maybe, actually it is a practical life skill right now. So just, we also need to make sure that our AEL area is evolving with the society, so it is compatible. So we're not, I know, there are many changes in our classrooms, that would make things modern. So children can, have a link between their classroom life and the outside life, but we also need to always, the COVID situation is a very good example of that. I don't know how we can do it, but obviously we have to adapt in a way that is safe. However, children need to continue doing these things, and that applies to every aspect of life that has evolved since Montessori.
But I think that the activity of a child being able to choose what they eat and serve themselves remains fundamental to our existence. It satisfies one of the human needs. We all need to have enough to eat, and teaching children to eat only what they need rather than to have too much or too little is a skill for life. So I would urge Adriana to really think again about how they provide for the snack, and see if it's at all possible for the children to be able to do it for themselves.
Well, it's interesting, Barbara, Michelle Wisby mentions that their children do still prepare their own snack and lay the table. There are just some extra elements to the activity which involves extra cleaning, and this is all part of what they need to experience now, and that's quite right, isn't it? You know, the children, as we, have to adapt to the new situation, and so snack time involves more cleaning, and that sets them up for life and gives them that independence and that ability to stay healthy. So
yeah, and if they serve themselves and put it on their own plate, it's more likely that their germs stay with their choice of snack rather than sneezing over somebody else's materials. I mean, you know, the ridiculousness of what we need to do and the mindfulness that to protect children's well-being in these conditions requires each one of us in the settings to make decisions that work for you. But do please try to ensure that you are not limiting the children's sense of personal freedom and capacity to do things for themselves because of the COVID. I'm sure that there's a lot of effort and lots of consideration within the staff teams. This should be possible.
I really like Suzanne's comment, which is that COVID-19 is everyday living right now. And so the children also need to learn to adapt to that and know how to exist alongside it. So that's...
Yeah. And everybody comments how much better washing hands has become since COVID. And what's more, we are not irritated by the fact when the child does it in a prolonged period of time, which used to be, you know, the 2-year-olds who would stand by the sink for 20 minutes soaping their hands was not always desirable for many teachers. So yes, I think that and, you know, COVID also allows us to perhaps do more cleaning, like using a mop or sweeping up or being aware, perhaps changing shoes when we come inside from the outside. There are lots of opportunities of encouraging the children to think about what we do, how we do it, to be mindful of others. After all, we are doing these take these precautions because we want to protect not only ourselves but also others, and that becomes an important aspect of the AEL activities.
And then I think
Yes.
we return to time, don't we? Giving the children the time. So rather than rushing them to take their shoes off, respecting them and giving them the time to take their own shoes off and to change into their new shoes, to take their coat off and to put their coat on. And I know that Anna Maria, you commented about, you know, your days as a childminder and how you loved it because that was a period where you could really follow the child. And I think that's what we need to embrace also in early year settings, in nursery settings. Just a little bit more time rather than come on everyone outside, let's go.
I love Michelle's comment about using Montessori used cleaning as a leisure activity to have a break from her mental skills. And I think that having hands and mind working together is definitely good therapy for all of us. Christina, I also absolutely agree with you that the AEL activities can have quite a feminine take, that they we need to think about how we engage the boys, how we invite them to those activities, because I really wouldn't want the girls to think that it's their job to dust, sweep and wash the dishes. This is to be a shared task as we go forward, each one of us learning how to do these things. But I am very mindful of the fact that the Montessori classroom can sometimes be more appealing to girls than boys, and and that we as practitioners, by our attitudes, are sometimes more critical of the boys' activities because they use their bodies in a very different way to the girls. And girls can sit neatly doing some coloring and we think they are all right. But if you listen to what they say to each other, it's not all right. They are not always very kind. So it's a different kind of developmental stage. And I think we need to be mindful of what is happening both from the boys and girls point of view.
I was going, I saw a comment that said, you know, AEL is the COVID situation, you know, how we're dealing with it is an AEL activity right now. And I was thinking about all the conversations this could initiate with the children, and this really links with the cosmic education, because all the activities that we're doing right now is not just to protect ourselves, it is to protect others. And just having children to appreciate, you know, when I see someone washing their hands constantly, when I see someone having their mask on, I see them and I say, you know, I respect you because of your respect for me, because I know that they're not putting that mask just for them, or they're not just washing their hands for them, they're trying to protect me. So just having children to understand, you know, this washing my hands activity goes way beyond protecting myself, and it's not just about me, it is about, you know, like basically I'm protecting my community. And with all of that, it links back to respect, it links back to, you know, our cosmic tasks. So, you know, always having those conversations, you know, alongside the activities that we're doing, so children can attach meaning to what they're doing. It's not just washing my hands, it's not just you know, using antibac to clean this space, it is protecting my society.
And Michelle made an important comment by suggesting that perhaps we should engage people, engage parents in explaining the meaning of AEL activities and giving children more opportunities to do them at home. And I would have hoped that at least some families have come to really appreciate that helping around the house is a very meaningful activity for young children, as they have allowed them to take the washing out of the washing machine, or helping to fold things, or helping to set tables. All those little things come together and promote that sense of contribution, giving the child the agency, being able to contribute to what other people do. And Michelle has given us, Wendelin has given us a link to an interesting report, which you all may want to access.
It's a blog, the Kavanagh report. It's a blog, and there's two links there. One just about the importance of Montessori practical life, and another one on Montessori practical life activities outside. If it's tricky for you to copy the link, I'll include it in the email that I will send out tomorrow once I've edited the video. But they're very useful, short articles, which are always good to share with parents, and just to show what the value is.
Wendelin, would you like to remind us of our next session for?
Yes, so
we've got a wonderful guest to join us.
We do. So our next Challenging Our Practice session takes place on Tuesday, the 8th of September, same time. And we will be focusing on the essence of Montessori, and Tammy Oosting will be joining us. Tammy interviewed Dr. Philip Gang recently, a wonderful, inspirational person, Dr. Gang. And he lamented the fact that as trainers and also as practitioners, we seem to be focusing these days, and I think that's relevant in our discussion today as well, but we seem to focus predominantly on the mechanics of Montessori rather than on the actual essence. So Tammy will bring her experience of that interview to our next webinar, and we will explore this idea: have we lost the essence of Montessori, and are we focusing too much on the mechanics?
And I'm sure that you have all received our newsletter, and you are aware that Montessori Everywhere is preparing to make a big celebration of Montessori's birthday. Please register and follow the Facebook page for Montessori Everywhere. There will be some fantastic activities in the day's celebration. So, and don't forget about our book club. We are going to revisit some of the chapters from the 1946 lectures. Gwendolyn has again given you all the details in the newsletter. So thank you very much, everybody. Those who are in the UK, I hope you will not melt in the next couple of days as we continue in the heat wave. And we wish everybody a lovely week, and see you next Tuesday. Thank you very much. Bye-bye for now.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you.